Welcome to Great Lean Leaders Making the Business Case. I'm Dr. Shannon Flummerfelt, and I'm so pleased to have with us here today Jack Russell, President of Rolar Products. Hi, Jack. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm doing well, thank you.
Well, glad to hear that. In this round two interview, I want to get into some more about your lean leadership practice, your hopes and dreams and what works and what doesn't work. So when we talked the last time in round one, you were describing to the audience how important having good visual management tools out on the factory floor were with your Datanomic system, where you can see things in real time and understand some of your, key performance indicators and so on. So, that I'm translating into the idea that you found that data-driven decision-making is important and valuable. Is that a fair assessment?
I'd say absolutely, and I think the data being available to everyone in the company, many times we have ERP systems and backroom systems of order backlogs and those kind of things that the average person on the manufacturing floor is just not privy to. And they get told what's going to happen. And having the data readily available that you can see anywhere in the plant floor, it doesn't solve the issue, but it shows everyone where you are. If you're on a tight deadline and they know how many parts you need to make, everybody in the company knows, how many parts you've made, up until that moment. So it's invaluable to have not only the data for the company analysis, but the data for employees. If they're ever going to help you make more money, if they don't understand those metrics, you're just telling them what to do. And when they see data, they can analyze on their own and say, well, I need to make this many more. It just opens up new possibilities for process improvement, really,
Mm-hmm.
when the data is out in front of everyone.
So what actually does that decision-making process look like once the data is out there? I mean, at Gemba on the factory floor, you're trying to make it shared and visible, to people who need the data sets. And then once those data sets are there, how do you actually, how does decision-making start to roll? I mean, you mentioned that there's some employee empowerment in terms of at their workstation, they might know small adjustments they need to make. But is there anything, I mean, besides that, that's critical, but is there anything else that you can help us to understand? Because, we have data everywhere. Getting reports is not a problem. In fact, we probably have too much data, 99% of the time, and have to just figure out what's the data we really need. But once you're looking at that on the factory floor or anywhere else, even in your ERP systems and so on, what is the decision-making process like around what the data are showing?
Well, the unique thing about the system is it does a lot of the basic blocking and tackling for you. So shop floor is only going to give you that snippet of what's going on so far in the shift, or at a certain moment of time you can look back on the whole day and see what happened. When you get deeper into it, as you look at your efficiencies across different part numbers, all that history is recorded as well. So if you target, you want to do a process improvement, we're falling behind, we're not making shipments, what's going on? You can pull up the history from months or years ago and find out what's the best you've ever run it. The system will actually tell you what your target should be for the next step. It knows what the actual cycle is, but it doesn't necessarily recommend that you can get there. It recommends, here's your next step. And then it shows you the day that you ran it, because most people, when you say, well, we should be able to target to go 30% faster. And if you have your employees in the room, they're going to go, oh, we've never run it that fast. We can't do it fast. There's no way we can do that. And then you show them the day, or maybe multiple days of actual data that you actually hit that number. And then some of the resistance goes away, that it's normal, like, oh, we can't run it that fast. They don't remember it either, but we have data. And we say, okay, now with a data set, now let's go problem solve, let's figure it out. So it's nice to have somebody like recording every transaction of everything you do And so it's useful on the manufacturing floor, but when you want to do a deep dive and do longer term projects, you have a place to start from. Many times, the first thing you do is, well, let's go out and collect data, right? Let's park some people there and let's look at cycle times, get the stopwatches out. And this is already right there, graphed and sliced and diced, and it doesn't solve it. But boy, you're a lot closer to being able to find the reason you're going slower, with that data set kind of presented to you in that manner. So that's what we use for longer term decision making. If you're going to move it from one machine to the other, is it because it's, now you have to go look, is it as fast as that machine can run? Would it be faster? Could we eliminate movement? Could we eliminate steps? All those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes even with that, and I'm not sure how it's gone for you there at Roll Products, but even at that, sometimes people will just simply ignore the data. They'll not take the process improvement, the advice, the support, the direction. And sometimes even, intervention is needed with certain individuals who just simply don't agree or won't let themselves agree or whatever the barrier might be. Do you have any tips for other leaders on how to handle the resistance? So you've got this data-driven decision-making process. You've used an open, transparent, collaborative process to both identify, solve and test solutions, solve problems and test solutions. And sometimes people still maybe they're just not comfortable with change or whatever the issue might be. Have you run into that? And if so, do you have any tips as to how to address that's the tough stuff there of, of lean leadership?
Yeah, that happens all the time where they deny data, right? I mean, we see that in the world around us even today, right? Well, that's not true. That's fake news. That's this, that's that. Because like you said, there is just so much data out there. Couple of things that we do is many times we'll go out there with a calculator and a stopwatch, and you have it in place. I can't make that many. It's like, well, let's run one. You run the stopwatch, I'll run the machine, hit the button, we can do the math, make them punch it in on a calculator, and they go, oh, and now multiply that times however many hours in a shift. And they go, oh, that's where that number comes from. So many times instead of just feeding them what it should be, they understand because they punch the numbers in themselves. And then when somebody else comes up and says, oh, that's BS, that doesn't work. Now they've educated themselves and now they're part of the solution because they go, oh, let me show you how that works. And then they begin to train the employees around them and say, no, that's the right number. I didn't think it was right either. And that's better than me telling them.
Yeah.
If you get a convert on the floor and they start to understand it, and then, they can share it amongst themselves, right? So
That's great. So really, you're describing modeling, letting them go through the whole experimentation cycle where it's okay to pose a question and let's explore, let's explore it together and see what we find. And like you say, that's much better than just saying, look, I just told you to do it. Here's what the data says, go do it. Because even with that, you're still going to have, there'll be resistant behavior going on in some form or another. So that's great advice. So when you think about communicating within your company and you have, customers and other stakeholders besides the employees and customers in your company, you have suppliers and vendors, and of course there's regulations and standards and so on. So what would you say are some of your keys to being successful in communicating? And there's all different kinds of messages to different types of audiences and so on. But is there anything within the lean toolkit that you found helpful on helping with communication? And can you share with us one of your best communication moments and maybe one of your worst communication moments?
well, I think communication starts with connections, and to have a connection with your employee. Many people try to communicate maybe a complex idea or solicit feedback and get somebody comfortable with telling you what they think, but you don't have a relationship with them. So it's a long term, it's kind of go to the actual place, actual person, and spend some time in non-work conversation so that when you get to a work conversation and sharing information, they know where you're coming from, right? That communication. One of the, I guess, that whole subservient leadership approach, one of the best communications I think that I've done in the company is when we did put Datanomics in, I thought, what are my people going to think? Somebody's putting in something that's going to track my every move, and put yourself in their place. If you were working on my shop floor and somebody was going to track your every move and could tell when you went to the bathroom or not by the gap in the production cycles, right? If you don't have people backfilling, how would they think? So, the statement I made first was, you're probably all wondering, why are we doing this? And then the next thing I said was, why are we doing this is because we need to know what's going on the manufacturing floor. But if you think I put this in to watch you push that green button, you have another thing coming, because, and I say it just like this, I would have fired your ass a long time ago had I thought you weren't pushing the button when you were supposed to.
Yeah.
And then I say, I trust everyone in this room that that's not the issue. So this is a tool for us to all collectively understand what's slowing us down. And, you have to, many leaders want to lead from way up on top instead of leading from below and from a place of understanding. And I guess I would encourage those leaders out there to really take a genuine interest in your employees and who they are and what makes them tick, because all those things affect how they perform on your manufacturing floor. So it's not necessarily a lean principle, but it is that whole connection piece and experimentation piece and all of those things. And there's only one right way to do things, standardize. And, that's all part of that message.
Yeah, well, I mean, design thinking, right, is the first step in it is really, it's a lean aligned tool. I consider it a lean tool. Design thinking is creating that high empathy, right, with who the customer is, and really, doing that deep dive and understanding. And I think that's just great, is, just making those connections and thinking about, this is thinking about what people are interested in hearing and knowing, how you can connect with them instead of creating a divide. And, those are some of the basics also that are, recommended for getting to yes when you're doing hard negotiations or having difficult conversations, is trying to understand what are the goals of the other side you're talking to, and, what are my goals? Is there anything we share in common, and can we build on that? So I think that's really powerful there. What about some of your best communication moments? Do you have one that stands out in your mind?
One of the things that we just did recently, we had some parts that had been scrapped and nobody wanted to claim them, right? They weren't recorded properly in the system. I don't know if somebody was trying to hide them or whatever, but we have this batch of material that we didn't buy, our customer supplied it. And when we do inventory and we're short, my customer is going to debit me $12,000 for that material. And we know where it is, we know what happened, we know why. But the thing that I try to communicate, number one, is we don't blame anyone necessarily, that we're going to single somebody out that Joe cut these too short and he should have known better. And there were all those things too that we've since corrected. But the point I try to drive home in that message is that $12,000 comes out of your paycheck. That's exactly the way I put it. It pulls money away from us being able to pay you. Now, I'm not going to dock all of you collectively the $12,000 for those bad parts, but it's that concept that everything we do not properly or not how we're planning to do it comes out of your paycheck. So it was probably a little brutal to say that, because I looked around the room and you can see people going, are they really going to ding my check for, I didn't cut those, and But it's that whole, everybody has to understand how it works. And even though it was some one person that might have made that error, we can all help each other not make those kinds of errors if we all have the same goal in mind and we know how it will impact us.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. Do you have any, nightmarish communication moments, maybe one you could share where, we have to be able to learn from these things, right? So is there anything that you could share with us that might help others to avoid the same mistake?
Yeah, probably personally, when you're frustrated, when manufacturing's not going as planned, instead of asking questions, you, I don't want to say make accusatory statements, but statements that could be taken as like, well, how did that happen? Right?
Mhm.
Without
Yeah.
asking a direct question, was the machine down? Did the fork truck not deliver components? What was it? So it's those kind of moments that I try to avoid. You have to stop and recalibrate before you speak, even
Mhm.
when you're upset, and you may have leapt to that conclusion that it's the operator or it's something else, but you have to contain yourself. So those are the moments I'm probably least proud of, when I've done that on rare occasion, but it's happened.
Yeah, no, I think we can all empathize with that for sure. From a design thinking viewpoint, for sure. And a humanity on the human to human level, for sure. So let's move on. I want to talk a little bit about critical thinking and zero defect thinking, because the basis for the experimentation cycle, the continuous improvement thinking is you want to be moving closer and closer to zero defect. And if you are a Six Sigma shop, you're moving to very, very high levels of zero defect, where there's just the slightest opportunity in millions and millions of parts or interactions or whatever it might be for a problem to occur. So certainly that does require, superior critical thinking. And I wanted to ask you, what does all of that mean to you in terms of getting to zero defect thinking? And also, a part of that, and you've talked about this, how you try to be very transparent in public about like we need to solve this problem. It's focused on the process, not the people. But are there any other tips you can share with us that create comfort for people? Because if you're going to get to zero defect thinking, you do have to address those who are your detractors, those who see it another way. They represent something that actually may be valuable and it's just hard to see. So what can you tell us about how you get to zero defect thinking? How do you create that safety around questioning the status quo, so that, you can get through that process? It's okay to ask a question.
I think the more we push for excellence, and we track our scrap individually at machines, and we know it's in a red bucket, and they have to document why that went in there and establish how many do I make before it's just one random, or is it a pattern, right? How many, when do you stop? Half your parts are going in that bucket and nobody says anything, right? So you've got to control that too. But one of the things I repeat a lot is, I think Toyota said it the best, and I think it was uh, a Lexus motto, is the relentless pursuit of perfection. To me, it's still the best kind of simple words to say. Perfection is what we're after, right?
Mhm.
And there should be no scrap. And the more we push for that, the more dialogue we get back. So I think in practice, the more you talk about it and say, why is this happening? And well, it just, the bar slips or this happens. And it becomes less trivial and more important that they need to do something even about those trivial things that well, it's just a little off, and we didn't make too many that way. You have to get past that thinking if you're ever going to get to that zero defect. And
Mhm.
we talk about it all the time. And I've said this before, we communicate a lot with our employees. And when we have birthdays, we all sing happy birthday, and then we review things that happen. So for us, that happens probably once a week, sometimes a couple of times a week. We've got a 15-minute shift overlap where we cover things like that. What's gone well? Thank you for getting this out. Here's what a customer feedback was. And then here's where we're failing or we're not doing as well as we could. You're going to be hearing more from us. And, we do that on a very regular basis.
That's great. And I think that is really interesting. I mean, unless you're Einstein, who can do the, what's called sit and think and really, develop these very complex, critically thought out ideas, most of us just, gain so much through communication. It does sharpen our thinking and our collective thinking as well. So that's great. Then I wanted to ask you too, along those lines, do you have any methods or ideas that you could share with us in regard to how do you gain inputs, whether it's a communication input or you're trying to gain critical feedback from the enterprise? So that would be, including your factory floor, but outside also of your factory floor within the larger ecosystem. Do you have any suggestions or methods on how to make sure you're keeping track of the full enterprise?
Well, from a leadership standpoint, you have to create an environment where there's no judgment on anyone for any kind of error made, right? That has to be kind of off the table. We're all going to make mistakes. I make mistakes. We all miss things. So I think setting that stage for making sure that even if somebody says something that isn't even in their area, because we've had that too, where there's conflict. Somebody says, well, I think this is wrong. And the person who's responsible for it, no, I do that right all the time. So it's that spirit of no judgment and collaboration that sets that stage to make sure that the entire enterprise is focused on that perfection.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And so, we've talked a lot about your data systems there, and you have ERP systems and other kinds of data-driven systems. Are there any other types of technology that you're either looking at or currently using now that you think would help? Or maybe, some people have a view of technology, a lot of times we think it's a panacea and will answer answer all the problems
Right.
that we have, when it's simply a tool that has to be properly used and managed and led. But can you give us any insights on technology? And of course, AI is a big looming issue for us all in both life and work. And
Right.
just wondering your thoughts on that whole area of Industry 4.0 and that technology revolution and AI.
I think the industrial revolution, the automation, everybody says, well, put robots in, right? And that will fix everything, right? Just like AI, you just run it through AI and it'll be perfect. And, the human intervention and that logic still has to be there. And, if I've learned anything from my exposure to the Japanese OEMs, many times they say if it costs a lot of money, takes a long time, it's probably not the right thing to do.
Mm.
So having that mindset, we've looked at putting robotics in or automating things, and you have to always have an open mind that I don't want to get into putting a robot in just because it's sexy and
Mhm.
we've got robots being fed by a machine, or machines being fed by a robot, and somehow that's better than having an individual there. Well, there's a lot of other factors that play in.
Mhm.
If you load a part in and it takes 10 minutes, the guy can run 3 of them, and you don't need any robots and no infrastructure. And then when it shuts down in the middle of third shift, do you have that technician there that can recover from a fault in a light curtain and get it back up and running? I've spent enough time on both sides of that fence.
Mhm.
And I think it has to be a healthy balance. And people, I think a lot of companies just jump to the conclusion that the technology is going to save me. And if you do the math, it might be faster to do it manually. Might not be. It depends. We're running an automotive job right now. We're making 10,000 parts a week. on two different machines, or 10,000 parts. Yeah, 10,000 parts a week. And you would think you'd have to automate that. And we're able to do it with manual labor. It's low cost, and we may eventually automate it, but we're constantly weighing,
Mm-hmm.
those options. So to me, you just have to be smart about it. You can't get enamored with technology and have it be the end all. Well, we'll just automate it. It'll be easier. We'll make more money.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not unless you put pen to paper and you really can prove it to me that you can make more money. So it's that same thinking to get all the data, analyze it. Does it make sense? You know, could something be done different? Process improvement on all of them, whether it's automated or non-automated.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that that's a really healthy view, because like I say, technology actually for 3 decades now has been highly misunderstood. And it's a shame because a lot of money does sometimes go into poorly developed technological solutions. And if you just put the technology in, that's enough. Well, no, you have to train people. You have to make sure, even before you get into that, like you say, that the numbers are there and it makes sense for the company. Now, on a slightly different topic, but related, you've described your love for the paradigm of the relentless pursuit of perfection. And so you must look around your organization and see untapped potential, whether it's in the employees, your executive team, your organization, the interactions, the communication or workflow structures, whatever it might be. What are some of your hopes? What do you think is left untapped and what could be possible for you in the pursuit of perfection?
Well, we've got a long ways to go, and the only way you know how far you have to go is to look backwards and see where you've been. And when we first, for example, our ERP system, that's an efficiency thing as well. And what we did even a year ago compared to what we do today is dramatically different. And it's from a collaboration of people who know the system more and more and more. And then they collaborate with everybody who uses the system
Mhm.
to track scrap and cycle times and all of those things. So um, there's a lot of room there. It's like anything else. Nothing's going to be perfect, but we see every day that that system gets better and better by looking at the faults, looking at the errors, and something gets lost or we don't know where it is. Now we put locations for every piece of inventory. I know what shelf and number it's on. And in a plant our size, that's pretty unusual, I would think. But
Mhm.
that's developed not because I gave that direction, it's because the team who uses it needs that data, and it makes their life easier, and they know they can make those suggestions and change how much they walk around looking for product. So that's kind of the relentless, everything, bar coded someday, whatever, so you can do it with a barcode instead of just recording a location, which some of that we could probably do today, but again, is that juice worth the squeeze? For
Mhm.
now, it's okay, right? But
Mhm.
you just never stop, you know, never be satisfied with what it is now, because you look backwards and go, boy, we're so far ahead of where we were even 6 months ago. And you realize how far you have to go ahead of you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I mean, it's exciting. And, having a vision as a leader, I think is really critical because if you do feel we're all tapped out, then you basically aren't leading. You're just managing and keeping the status quo. So if you're in that relentless pursuit of perfection, that's, a very different mindset and, definitely requires some vision. So that's wonderful. So, from your standpoint, Jack, you've had a chance, obviously, to study lean and lean applications and lean leaders, from a global perspective. With all of your very strong experiences, What would you say your strengths are as a lean leader? We've had a chance to get to know you here. You've been very transparent, and I appreciate that. What are your strengths, and how do those strengths translate into actually helping your organization? What does that look like?
I think the first thing is compassion and understanding of human beings, right? It starts at that level. And I don't think you can truly be a leader unless you really like people. If you're going to manage people and, maybe if you're managing a remote factory somewhere and you're just looking at data, you don't need those relationships. But to me, it's the compassion and understanding that I have for every employee and where they come from and what might have happened yesterday in their life or today in their life. It's the company is important, but without the employee, you don't have a company. So there has to be a symbiotic relationship there. And I always try to use just a basic logical approach to breaking down data. I don't have to throw out acronyms or CPs and CPKs and, all of those kind of words that employees may not know or people in the office may not know. And now you're just kind of try to play what you know compared to what somebody else knows. So I think that's my strength, is being able to, with anybody that works for us, be able to have a conversation with them virtually about anything, including work and the process and accuracy and quality. And it's not a heated discussion on any of those topics. It's a very logical, what do you think we ought to do? I'm a firm believer in that the person running a job or a process knows it better than anyone else, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it's our job to sort out what we should keep doing and what things we should change. But they're the authority. And if you always approach lean with, I'm just here asking questions, you're the expert. And I can just, my expertise is to help guide the data you give me back into a solution where we can all see it better and identify what we need to change.
Yeah, I think that's really, really wonderful. Because certainly, I mean, it does all, begin and end with people. And I would imagine that is represented and you've shared some of this information with me in the past, but it's represented with your employee satisfaction and your turnaround, turnover numbers in your employee pool and so on. You have a pretty stable workforce, I would imagine. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, we do. One of the questions I get asked a lot in interviews, how are you doing to find people to work for you, right? It's hard to find people today and after COVID. And we usually have people standing in line to come to work. I just saw a guy today was in the front lobby when I came in, and we interviewed him 3 or 4 months ago. And he said, I want to come and work here. And I said, well, we don't have anything right now. We've got some opportunities coming up. We've got new work coming. We just make a phone call, he gives notice and comes to work for us. And that doesn't just happen, automatically. Again, I try to put myself in the place of my employees. I've worked enough myself on a manufacturing floor to know what that mindset feels like. And when in the summertime we have a shop party, and you've probably heard this before, a lot of companies do. They throw a big picnic and you can bring your family, and it's really great. It's on a Saturday, so you have to take one of your days off, and you're kind of obligated to go to the shop party and bring your family and all that kind of stuff. So we do it a little differently. We were 4-10s, so Fridays are always a day off, and that's usually an overtime day for us. We're 5 hours or 10 hours, whatever that may be. Well, we have the shop party on a Friday. Well, I have that shop mentality. Usually when I'm in the shop on a Friday, I'm getting paid time and a half. So now here I am at this party. So what do? We pay everybody who comes to our shop party time and a half to come to the shop party. They all get 4 hours of time and a half. And I've had other owners look at me and go, are you nuts? You're paying people overtime and they're at their party? It's like, are you crazy? Do the math and see how much that really costs you.
Mm-hmm.
and we do a t-shirt every year that's, you know, a unique design, and I got paid to party is what's on the t-shirt. Well, you know, when they wear that with their friends, and a lot of their friends are also machinists, you know, people tend to gravitate towards people who are kind of like them,
Mhm.
and they go, what's that? It's like, you guys have a shop party? Yeah, we had one. It was kind of lame. They gave us burgers, but you know, it's like, yeah, we had one too, but I got 4 hours time and a half. What'd you get?
Well,
So,
that's
you know, we have a cornhole tournament that's a blind draw. I played, everybody plays, and the first place team, the two people get a full day's paid vacation. So depending on
wow.
your, and that's a 10-hour day, right?
Yeah,
So
that's
depending
a
on
lot.
your income, that's not a bad, you know, first place prize. And you get your name on a plaque that's engraved in the lobby, you know, for all posterity. And
Yeah.
there's bragging rights, and we do these great big giant medals and, you know, those kind of things. So it's that building of a culture that you really care. And you have to just keep proving that over and over
Yeah.
that
No,
you
I
care.
great. I think that's great. So, if you were to look back on everything you've done, at Rolar or, before then, what is the most what is the accomplishment you've done within the lean leadership sphere that you are most proud of? What can you tell us how it felt, what that was like? Do you have one that stands out to you?
Yeah, I have a project that we got passed over on. We had quoted it was a tier two automotive job, fairly high volume. It was 400,000 pieces a year. I don't know if we were even ISO certified, and it was a Japanese company that came to us. Somebody brought them to us. They were impressed with the company, our knowledge base, and obviously I had a lot of background in automotive. And they decided to go to a bigger company and said, we really like what you're doing. We'll give you some service parts. And Japanese are very tenuous that way. They're not going to just leap in and give you a project, right? They're going to make sure they can trust you and all that. So, and I knew that was probably going to be the case when I quoted it, but I went after it just as though I was going to get it, just like when I was in the automotive business. And 3 months later, I get a phone call from a Japanese engineer that had been there, and she introduced herself and who she was. This is Miko-san or whatever her name was, and said, "Do you remember that part?" And I said, "Yeah, I remember. You were here, you know, 3, 4 months ago." And she said, "How long?" They said, "Sumimasen, excuse me. What do you mean, what part?" She goes, "Oh, that part that you quoted." I said, "Yes." She said, "How long before you can make?" And I said, "Why? How much time do I have?" And she said, 30 days. And I was a little bit baffled because the Japanese typically don't wait that long. So something had gone wrong with the supplier they picked, and
Ah,
they called us. So we had to build two fixtures. We had 12 parts in the machine at all times. So we had to build two fixtures, a check fixture, get the check fixture certified, and then certified by an outside certification source,
wow.
run trials, be production ready, and we had to put 5 studs and torque them to torque. We had to set up an assembly area, the whole 9 yards, and we launched that project 31 days after that phone call came in.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, that is
And
that's
yeah,
a lot of things to get done.
very proud of that group. And I don't think they even believed it, because when they brought their staff in, all the white coats came in, and we went through the launch, you know, progress and auditing and quality issue, you know, the whole thing in a new product launch. And they admitted that they could never have done what we did, and they've never asked anybody else to do it. So um, that's one of the things I'm most proud of, that, you know, our team, even early, that was, you know, 3 or 4 years ago now, but, you know, it says something about the resilience of the team, because I had to say, this is how it's got to go. We have to do this. We have to do that. And it was a great experience. And someone who knows the president of that company was just in my plant a week or two ago, and they brought special greetings. If you know this, from a Japanese president, to me to make sure that you tell Jack how much we appreciated what he did for us 4 years ago.
Wow, that's
I don't,
amazing.
I don't do any work with them now, but I know that in the long term, they
Hmm.
will remember what you did.
Yeah, yeah, that's
So
fantastic.
that's probably the thing I'm, the most proud of. And they asked us several times to jump in when their OEM supplier couldn't keep up. They
Hmm.
called us up and said, "Hey, can you make 40,000 more parts? It's how when you need them." So 2 days later, we're shipping components.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
good
wonderful.
spot to be in. Yep.
Yeah, very nice. That is really great. On the flip side of this discussion, what are things that concern you most? Every leader carries that extra burden with them, the leadership view of the organization and how it fits into the world. And there's a lot. You carry a heavier burden as a leader, but what worries you the most? What concerns you the most? And based on some of your most perplexing challenges.
Well, the outside forces that impact our business, you can't control everything. And I'm not an alarmist by that stretch at all. We've reshored a lot of work and then it's gone back. So it's helped me and then it's gone back the other way. Um, Probably the most concerning thing is to continue to find those people that fit, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're blessed to have people who fit in. And we've had some people, usually they'll take themselves out, but that continuous stream of people who care or that you can coach into understanding what they need to do to be good employees. And, we've had a few where I don't know, I ever want to give up hope on anyone, but some of those people may never get it, right?
Mm-hmm.
They go, well, I'm here and you're paying me and it doesn't matter what I make and, how many parts I make, those kind of things. So the fear is that the workforce doesn't get so dwindled that you can't find anybody that you can even educate or even wants to be educated in what
Mm-hmm.
you need them to know, that willingness. Knock on wood, we haven't had that, but that's probably one of the fears I have in the background. Some of the people we interview, you go, nope, 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 nope. But if that's all you have, now you got to pick one,
Yeah.
right? So that's probably the biggest fear.
Yeah, and I think that workforce shortage and just the challenge of finding the right person for the right job is a huge and growing challenge that's, nationwide for sure in all organizations. So I think you'd find some folks who would definitely relate to what you're saying on that point. So if you look at your lean leadership practice, is there something that you are currently focused on? Like, this is something I need to improve. I need to, get over this and move on to this, or I need to focus here, and that will lead to something else. Is there anything in particular that's on your mind in terms of where you would like to improve as a leader?
Well, we're still a job shop. We have some jobs that run more consistent than others, and that's probably the most challenging thing about our lean journey here is to when you make 50 pieces every 3 months, what do you do first? How much
Mhm.
time do you spend?
Mhm.
And it's a mix of all those things. So it's that constant juggling of I should be looking at that, but which one has the most value to me in the short term? They're all valuable, but sometimes you have to choose your battles. So that's one of the most concerning things about trying to implement everything. The high volume is way easier than what we do. This is
Yeah.
probably the most difficult implementation of lean on every job, every opportunity, and it's just a daunting task. And you just have to do it a little at a time
Mhm.
and focus on the bigger hitters. And some of them kind of can do it on their own. And then there's other ones that you need to fix it and you can't get there. You don't have the resources or the time. So
Mm-hmm.
that's probably the biggest challenge in a shop our size, where we're making thousands of different part numbers with random orders and not consistent orders. That
Mm-hmm.
makes that one piece flow a little difficult to do sometimes.
Yeah, and like you say, that the challenge of the prioritization of that, where that falls priority wise does determine the time and resources, that get allocated to it. And so, that's definitely difficult. And, you've mentioned the small job shop and the challenges of it, and the daily barriers, that it presents, over, when you have a larger operation and you have volume and you have better scalability and some of those things that can be very, very helpful. It's like it doesn't matter if you are an entrepreneur doing a startup, still all the functions need to happen in your business. So
Yeah.
either one person can do them all, or, two people can, or 5,000, who knows, depending on how big you are, but everything does
Yep.
have to be done. So are those some of the barriers that you think would keep you from, being your best, that are very difficult? They're difficult to solve because, you can't necessarily scale up, or maybe you can. I mean, you have your new facility, so you have some scalability potential there, but what are some of those barriers that are just like, oh, that thing is in the way again? Is it a lack of time? What is it for you?
It's time and resources and having enough earnings to be able to go after some of those to solve them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So um, fixing those things sometimes is cheap and other times is more expensive. We do a lot of manual gear hobbing, and I'm constantly going, I could do that faster, but it's going to cost me money. And I'm still, one guy can run more than one machine. So you go, okay, I'm doing it at half the speed, or I can run three at a time with one guy compared to automation. So those are some of the barriers is resources to, I'd love to automate a lot more of it. I mean, I can close my eyes and know what I do, but I don't know if it makes economic sense. So that's
Mm-hmm.
always a Rubik's cube that you're trying to figure out on a regular basis. Like I said, we've got machines from, high speed 12-axis Swiss machines that you can run lights out, nobody here, right? Making parts all night, very precise parts. So I have three machines in my gear department that have property of the War Department plates on them. So
Yeah.
in 1940,
Yeah. Yeah.
so, and they still make awesome parts. So
Sure.
it's that whole Rubik's Cube. How do you bring those together? So we've had jobs where we use the Swiss machine to make the gear blank, highly precise, run
Mm-hmm.
automatic. You can do it all in one operation, and then we put it on a hop
Mm-hmm.
to finish it. So we're blending some of those technologies too, and using um, things like a cell layout for high volume where you can run it with one person, or you can run it with four people. You get more production out if you have four, or you can run it with one.
Mm-hmm.
Those C-shaped C-shaped cells that
Mm-hmm.
you can,
Yeah.
flex your workforce.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use it anywhere, and we've got a cell set up like that. It's an automotive cell with World War II equipment in,
Yeah.
and it's competitive in the marketplace. So
That's
that's
interesting.
fun. That's fun too.
Yeah, no, that's super fun. And of course, I mean, in order for you to produce a deliverable, your CapEx heavy. And, like you say, you have to think that through very carefully. And so that certainly is a challenge. I can understand that. Can you describe to us what best practice for a lean leader looks like? Something that a lean leader should be thinking about on a daily basis, monthly basis, yearly basis.
I think part of it is to know, at least appreciate where you are. Sometimes it can be such a daunting task to get everything right. Um, so some of it you have to make sure that you pat yourself on the back, occasionally to say, okay, here's where you are now. It's an acceptable level for now. And yeah, I think that's one of the challenges. I don't know what the second part of that question was, Shannon.
What does their practice look like? If you were to describe the ideal leader, what does that look like? Is there a difference between what they do every day versus every month versus every year? What are they thinking about? What are some of the key things that they should be doing?
Pretty much everything all the time. Probably the best way to put it.
That is a good way to put it. That's interesting.
Well, because I think you need all the inputs, that we get. So what you should be doing all the time is all the things we've talked about, checking on actual place, actual data, looking at things, being involved in problem solving, some sense, of how it's going, some just human, how are the employees reacting to this last change that we put in, or the last procedural change. So I think there's a lot of things you have to do on a regular basis, from a Gemba walk to reviewing reports to going, participating yourself in actual lean activity and watching changes and watching people get empowered. There's nothing better when the lights go on with somebody when they punch numbers in a calculator and go, oh, I didn't know that was that. So all those things are things to watch and participate in, and also to, I think, appreciate when you see them. And it will help keep you on the path that all these things that you do that don't seem to matter sometimes, ultimately they do. They all build up to make a difference in your company, the organization that you work for.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to think about it, that, everything does matter all the time. And some things have long-term impacts that you can't understand or wouldn't even conceive of, just like when you had that order come back in your lap, that's really, really cool to see that. And you just have to, I think, operate on good faith on that basis. So, you've described for us all of the ups and downs and learnings and challenges and great successes that you've had in lean leadership. Why would someone want to become a lean leader? I mean, it's definitely a very engaged, disciplined way of leading an organization. Can you tell me what you think the return on investment on lean leadership is?
In a dollars and cents
No, it doesn't have to be.
way,
It could be, but it doesn't have to be. Just, where do you get the bang for the investment that you've made, whether it's, mental effort, emotional work that you put in, physical work, whatever that looks like. Why would someone, in terms of making the business case for lean leadership, why in the world would anyone want to become a lean leader? What's the benefit, the return on that?
well, it's, to put it simply, it's satisfaction for a job well done, and it really is beyond lean. It's really about how the whole company is perceived, how your employees are perceived in the community. I mean, it expands well beyond just what you do. And we think of lean just to get more parts out with less time, and we make productivity and there's zero defects, but there's more to it than just making parts and shipping them out the door. There's value that you put back into your employees, back into your community. So it's, for somebody wanting to get into this, it's probably going to be the hardest job you have, one of the most emotional jobs you'll have, and one of the most rewarding jobs you'll have. And if you're up for all of those, and you're up for that challenge, and you can not have to only grab the ring once to think you're successful, you have to kind of know that you're successful as you go, and every day you'll get wins. Some better than others, but there isn't a day goes by that I don't go, man, we're so much better at that than we were a week ago. And the team has come together, and you've had some influence, and then you just let them go. You just coach them, and it's rewarding in the way I see it. I do it because it's fun. Even at my age, I should just retire and quit, but I'm not even close to doing that. It's just there's so much enjoyment that you can get out of seeing other people succeed.
I think that's wonderful. And if you were to again making the business case for lean leadership, what what is something that you could encourage someone to do stepping into lean leadership or trying to get better as a lean leader? What is the most value added from your viewpoint? What would be the most value added decision or thinking routine or interaction that a lean leader can engage in? Like if
One
you
of
had
the
to
first,
prioritize, what's at the top of the list?
well, if you're new coming into this world, you're gonna, you've had some lean training. Um, I would go spend time in the actual place, in the actual situation, and do the work yourself. Not all the time, but to begin with, that's where I'd start
Hmm.
and understand what it feels like to be the people that you want to coach and how hard it is what they do. It's like, well, they just put that in and push that button. It's easy. Go do it yourself for 10 hours.
Hmm.
And then how do you feel the next day? And how do you feel the next day? Those are the kinds of things that make you realize that some of the stuff we learn in books matter. That how many steps you take to put a part away. If you can cut that down by 2 steps, how many miles does that save on somebody's body for the next 20 years they're going to do that job? So I guess that would be the first step I would do, is just get involved and kind of keep your mouth shut and your ears open
Hmm.
to begin with. And when you start that journey, you may have all these things that you see that should be fixed, and you have to withhold that and let people figure out what you know without them knowing that you told them, if that makes sense, right? I mean, they understand it by the questions you ask, not by what you told them to do.
Yeah, I think that's great. So if you were to think about your impact at Roll Products in terms of being a lean leader, would you say that that translates? I mean, you talk about overall, the satisfaction that you get, but does that translate into any of these things or all of these things? Employee empowerment, employee satisfaction and productivity, quality of products, efficiency of your operation, and the ability to pivot or your agility in terms of serving clients. What are your thoughts on, the value add there or the ROI for lean leadership?
Well, it's really all of those. Obviously, my coaching is rubbed off on, many other associates, some in leadership, some not, right? And it's it's the transfer of that information, to those individuals that um, is really the roadmap.
So if you were to give advice to an emerging lean leader, someone who is figuring out how to be successful in lean leadership, what's the most honest, realistic advice you can give them? I mean, you just mentioned like you have to go to Gemba, you have to actually see the real work, being how it works so you can understand and get your empathy and your data sets correctly aligned with all of that. But if someone said to me, you know, what can you tell me here? Can you give me a sound bite on what it means to achieve that, successful lean leadership? Jack, what would you say?
I got to cut this down to a few words. Uh,
Well, go ahead, just start talking. It'll probably come to you.
well, it's a genuine, to me, it starts with a genuine respect for the people that you're talking with. You have to be armed with the tool set,
Mhm.
right? And um, it's um, it's the application. Again, I think I've said this in a different way, but it's trying to instill the knowledge in the rest of the staff so they're as knowledgeable as you are without telling them that you know it, that they figure it out on their own.
Wow, that's cool. That sounds wonderful, and I know you've done it really well there at Roll Our Products. Are there any closing thoughts you'd like to leave us with in regard to lean leadership here at the end of your round 2 interview?
Oh, I would encourage people if they, have even thought about it. It's not like, I think a lot of people think lean leadership is a glorified supervisor, or it's a book learned guy that's going to come down and tell everybody what to do. And it's probably none of those. It's much more of a people person job and mixed with skill sets and tools. So if you have that mix of background or that knowledge or that willingness to listen, even when you know somebody might not be totally accurate, to let them lay that out there, that's some of the best, I guess, suggestions I can give.
I think that's great. Well, what a great closing thought for us here today. Thank you so much, Jack, for the time and thought you put into these 2 rounds of interviews, and for your ability to just share honestly what it means. And I think that's what we're trying to accomplish here, is to give people a realistic picture of it. This is Jack Russell, everyone, president of Roll Our Products. Thank you again, Jack. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you. I appreciate it.